Thank you so much for meeting me. It's so nice to have you here. Um,
My pleasure.
Now, first, could you just start off with a breakdown of what you do currently and like what a day of work entails for you?
Sure. I work as a music publisher. First, my name is Lauren Ishida. I am the director of promotion for Schott Music New York, European American music. What I do in a typical day is promote the music of our composers, both living composers and composers, who've passed away, like in our back catalog. So everything from Beethoven and Bach to composers of today, like Lili Young and Andrew Norman, and all sorts of amazing composers we get to work with. I guess there's not necessarily one typical day, I think, but a lot of my work entails um, helping people in our industry know more about the music that's being composed today by our composers, and then bringing that music to them to listen to, and then also talking about things like commissioning new music, going to conferences, having meetings with our colleagues, working with our composers to make sure that their materials are really, up to date, and we're informing people about what the latest works they've created are. Just a lot of promotion work, and a lot of sharing new music with colleagues. So it's a pretty great gig.
So it sounds like a lot of like, education and just spreading the word. And how did you first get interested? How did you find this job? But if we go more further back, when did you first find a passion for music and when did you find your interest?
So I've always loved music so much. It was such a passion of mine from a young age. I used to sing in the choir, at school, at church, and then I took voice lessons. So I really enjoyed making music. I also really loved music history. That was something that in college I really began to study a lot more. Musicology was just really wonderful, especially I was studying a lot of early music, which I was very passionate about. I didn't know a lot about publishing actually at all, either book publishing or music publishing. I've since learned a lot more about both, but really what happened, I kind of fell into it after just a lot of different educational and work experiences. And you start to realize that a lot of what you've learned in one area then can be transferred to another area. So this is why I'm so happy that you're doing this project, because I know that as you know, when I went to my undergrad program at Barnard, I studied music and I also studied psychology because I wasn't sure how one person could, sort of carve out a career in music if they weren't performing full time, which is not something I really thought of doing or necessarily could do. Um, or teaching, getting a PhD and becoming a professor of musicology. That's a wonderful career, but it's, there are a few jobs, sorry, there are a few jobs and a lot of people, pursuing that degree. So I knew that it's a tough field in and of itself. And I wasn't sure much about, the other areas in music that I could really pursue. I thought music business was really a lot of business people who like the arts, as opposed to artists who gain some business skills and then work in that field. So I didn't know much about it at all, and so it's really something important, I think, to share with young people. There's a huge array of careers within music, that are not teaching full time or performing full time. Those are wonderful careers, but there are other careers in there too, like publishing, like managing artists, like all sorts of things that you could do. You can be in programming, and these are areas that you can explore even when you're in high school and college, and think about them as possible careers, especially if you're hugely passionate in music. It's something great. Long story short, I fell into it. I studied music as an undergraduate, and then I was working in psychology. I was working as a clinical research coordinator at Mount Sinai Hospital, and I did that for a few years, thinking I would go to grad school for psychology. But something in my mind just kind of said, why don't you just go take some grad courses in music and see if you like it. And so Hunter College was nearby, where I was working. And so I signed up for a master's course there, and ended up really loving it. And it was actually there because they had a new opera program. They had their opera company focused in new American operas. So through that program, and it was at the time it was very small. We had kind of a shoestring budget, so everybody had to do everything. If you were, so I would coordinate the research, the rehearsal schedule, and then I would also go get the props, and I would make sure that the singers had the music, and it's just a lot, write press releases, and I got a lot of experience, and I thought, oh, this is great. I wonder if there's a job I could do that's like this. And over time, I realized, oh, there are many jobs one could do. So I was doing that for a while. I had my children, I got married, had kids. And then when I was looking for to continue in music, I came across this wonderful position at Schott Music in promotion. And because I had done all that work in production with this opera company, I knew how to write press releases. I knew a lot about promotion and marketing. I had really stayed in touch with, the music that was being performed in the in at the time, who were the composers to listen to, and kind of the state of the field, and I ended up getting this job, and I've been there for about 8 years now. Hope I'm there for a very long time. It's a great field, and but I had to learn a lot about publishing on the job, because it was an area that just there's so many nuances. But you learn on the job, and that's I think a lot of the music business in general is some of the things it's great to have a musical background in, knowing a bit about composition, knowing a bit about music history, knowing, that sort of thing. But I think there's a lot that can be learned just by being around the people who are doing it. So if you're a college student, for example, and you're looking, what am I going to do with my summer? An internship is a great way to start to get your feet wet in just different areas. Try to explore different areas of music business. And you can learn a lot from those experiences.
That's so cool. I've
Yeah.
never used to be a researcher.
Yeah.
Um, but you touched on this a little bit earlier. When you went to Barnard, you said you studied psychology,
Yeah.
and did you also study music?
I did. I studied both of them. I was a double major, and it was tough because I loved both of them so much. But I think at the time, and I think I would have been very happy as a psychologist. But at the time, I didn't know of any career in music that I could sort of say, okay, this is like a career I can do long term. I didn't know. So now I go back actually sometimes to my alma mater and talk to music students or art students who are looking for careers in the music or the arts industries, but just are sort of like not necessarily looking to be in academia full time and are not either, visual artists or performing artists full time either. And so it's like there's a whole array, but you don't know what you don't know, right? So it was a lot of learning that I had to do. But I'm glad I got the psych degree too. Again, the more that you study, I think, in all sorts of different areas, the more you know, whether it's, music and art or philosophy and science, like it's great to have a background in so many things, just to, the more you can learn, the better, I think. So just an overall thing.
And when you were applying, did you apply for a specific music-related program at Barnard, or was it just one singular, like regular
Yeah,
section?
that's a great question. I just went, I started as a psych major, just as a psych major, and I thought I would just take some music classes for fun. But then when I saw the offerings, I realized, oh my goodness, there's so many classes I want to take. I'm going to end up with a major. So I didn't apply specifically. I think what's really great, especially for musical students who are more performance inclined, schools like Barnard and Columbia, and I mean, there's so many other schools, Rice, Harvard. Yeah, like they all, not all, but many of them have associated music schools. So where you can either take lessons at the conservatory level, or you can in some cases you're double majoring across the two institutions. I have a composer, Catherine Balch, who on the Schott roster, who I believe was an undergraduate at Tufts in political science and also in music at NEC. So, so there's a lot of those programs available too. So you can really get sort of a conservatory experience, but also a liberal arts experience. So that's really nice. But in my case, I didn't apply for any of those programs. I just applied for the music major because once I was already there, I just was like, oh, I'm gonna take all these classes and end up with a major. So it was kind of fun.
And did you have some sort of mentor or guiding figure, or how did you figure this all out by yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I had a few, and I got really lucky too because actually at the time I was most serious about psychology. I was really sort of on that track, and 3 years into this research job, it was time clearly to apply to a job or to apply to grad school in psychology. And my mentor at the time, he had invested so much of his own time in training me. And I said to him, I'm thinking about exploring this other path. And he was so gracious and generous and was like, you should do it. You should definitely, if this is something you feel like you should pursue, you should do it. So I did. And that was really incredible. He was very supportive in that way. But along the way, in terms of music, I've had a lot of great supporters. So at Barnard, there was Gail Archer, who was the head of the music program. She's an incredible organist, an incredible teacher. So she was very supportive. And then at Hunter, Susan Gonzalez, the head of the opera program, was the person who she, along with her now unfortunately deceased colleague Richard Burke, had the opera company together. They really nurtured it. It was this new idea. And the other cool part about it, and the part that was relevant for publishing, was that they, in addition to doing main stage works by noted American composers like Jack Beeson and Henry Morricone and others, they also had this program called Creating Opera, which you're seeing more of it now, but at that time, around 2010, I guess it was 2009, 2010, it was pretty cutting edge where students from the creative writing program would write libretti, so the text of the operas, and then the graduate students, and I think some undergraduates graduates as well, would create the operas. These would be short chamber operas, and then the music the next semester would be given to the singers. It would be coached. They would have an orchestra, and they would put on these 10-minute chamber operas by various composers. And for a lot of them, it was the first time they were writing substantial works for the voice. So it was an incredible program, just to see how composers, even composers who were sort of fluent in other areas, approached writing opera for the first time. It's a very different experience, as you know, from singing opera. There's so many factors that have to be reconciled, even just text and music alone, but then the dramatic element and telling the story in a short period of time. There's a lot to think about. So that was it was a really cool experience. And I think that's informed a lot of, what I thought about working with composers. It was the first time that I got to work with composers extensively, and I realized how much I really enjoyed it. Which, as a publisher, I think you have to really love working with composers. Just like if you're an artist manager, you have to love working with artists. I think the passion more than anything else, because a lot of what you see in the music business world, you can learn on the job. Like there's the technical elements. But I think the love of it and the passion has to be something that's genuine to keep you in the field. It's a lot of interpersonal connection and yeah, you have to have that sort of driving force there. So that was the first time I really worked with composers, and I thought, wow, this is so cool. So yeah, that was a good background. So I'd say those were my mentors. Those were the formative experiences I had.
And how, when you went back to graduate school, how did your family and friends react to you not pursuing psychology for grad school and music instead?
Yeah, good question. I think they were a little surprised, although maybe not completely, because it was funny. I was working for those few years, and on, vacation times, or, I would take days off to go to like a choral festival or to do like music making stuff. So I don't think they were completely caught off guard. But they were very supportive. I was very lucky, and I was pretty sober about what I was doing in the sense of, let me try it out, let me see, because there are certain fields that are just more challenging than others in terms of making a living and finding stability, right? And so I think, you have to, if you're going to pursue a career in the arts, you have to think strategically about, building up your skills and what kind of jobs suit your personality really well, what the state of the field is, when you're looking for different positions. So I think I had a rational background for it. So it wasn't like, I'm going to try this thing and I don't know what's going to happen. But I was very lucky. I did have a lot of support. So that was really great.
It's nice.
Yeah.
And final question,
Yeah.
do you have any specific advice that you would give to young people in high school and college or undergrad that want to pursue a career in the arts but are not sure exactly how or which path to take?
Absolutely. I would say do everything, learn everything, explore everything that you can when you can. So, for example, if you are a high school student and you're passionate about music, maybe you play an instrument or you sing or you do both or whatever it is, you love music, you love any of the arts, really. Find out ways to build up your experience in areas that maybe you don't always go to. So if you're, let's say, an instrumentalist and you play in the orchestra, you might realize, and you're in high school, you might realize we're performing all these great concerts, but we don't have an active social media presence. I know social media. Can I start doing this for the school? Can I volunteer to take photos and share, what we're doing? You know, it's something that is a benefit to the school district, but it's also really beneficial to you as a person learning and building up your toolbox of, well, I've managed social media, and then I can write a press release. I can write a press release about our concert and send it to the school newspaper. And that's great experience, like actual real life experience. And it costs you nothing. It's a wonderful volunteer experience, but it's also real life work experience that can go on the resume. And it gives you, very quick feedback. Is it, following up with people? Like sometimes you don't hear back when you send out a press release. Okay, maybe I want to follow up again. Hey, would you like to send a reviewer from the paper? And those sorts of things. And then when maybe you also want to take a leadership position. Like if you have a music honor society, maybe you want to try to become a secretary or the vice president or president of the club. Maybe you want to start, if you're thinking of performing, maybe you're a performer again, but you don't have any uh, conducting experience, but maybe you're thinking that's an area I want to explore. Maybe you start a small ensemble. And those are all things you just have to kind of think outside the box. And if an opportunity isn't immediately available to you, figure out if you can create one. I think in a lot of cases, educators are so passionate about making sure that their students can explore the full potential of everything that they want to explore. And in some cases, with like let's say lab courses, right? You take physics, then you take like AP physics, and then maybe you can work at a lab over the summer. There's kind of a graded course, so to speak. In music, especially music business, it's not always so clear because there's a lot of different things you could do. So I would just talk to a lot of people and see if there seems to be a gap that you have skills to fill or you possibly can build the skills to fill. I would do that. And then when you get to college, take as many courses as you can in the field that you love. If you are somebody who loves music, then I would take classes. I wish I had taken, for example, more music production classes. We didn't have a lot when I was an undergrad. We had more, I think, maybe in grad school, but I just wasn't. That wasn't my wheelhouse, but I wish I'd taken a few more in production so I understood that world a little better. Educate yourself in all the areas that you don't know so well. And whenever you can get an internship, spend the summer doing something, do that. And then the other thing is to explore, and read and listen. Music is, our career is all about music. It's about listening. So go to as many concerts as you can. I remember when I was an undergrad, Miller Theater at Columbia had these like $7 student tickets. I think oh my gosh, I don't know how many student tickets I purchased, but it was so great. I mean, you could go and you could listen to these world-class artists just, many nights. I would go down to the Met and, get the $25 family circle seats all the way in the back, with little binoculars, but just listening to everything, finding out who's performing, what are they performing, looking too, if you can't get to performances necessarily, you can go on websites and see, okay, what is Houston Grand Opera, producing this year? What is Santa Fe producing? What is, San Francisco and all the majors and the regional houses and figure out like what the trends might be, So explore it to the fullest extent that you can. Indulge your passion, listen, read, learn what's going on in your field because that knowledge will serve you really well. A lot of our field is about connection and building that connection, either with the people that you're working with directly or just with people in your field in general. You know, we're all it's actually it's a smaller world than you think, and you're probably only one or two steps away from knowing someone who knows the next person that you want to get to meet. So it's really great to know what's happening not just in your bubble, but then like around the country and around the world. So and the best part about it is like most of what we do is listening to great music. So you know, the exploration part is really fun. And have confidence too, because again, it can be tricky when you're forging your own path and maybe not in sort of a sequential, prescribed sequence that's more common in other careers. And so, you know, I think having some confidence in that and talking to as many people as you can, just like you're doing now, you know, getting as much information from different people throughout the field. There will be all sorts of opinions and ideas and thoughts and suggestions. But what I found too is that most people are very generous with their time. They really want to sort of help the next generation because that's what it is, right? The arts are dependent. The success of the arts is dependent on, you know, the next generation embracing it and then taking it forward. So that's you guys. So I think that's really special. And so talk to as many people as you can. Be confident and just learn and do as much as you can. And yeah, and just keep being curious, I think is the big thing. So and keep the passion. So I hope that was helpful.
Yes, it was. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure, Mira. Thanks so much for doing this. I think you're going to have a lot of people that you're really helping sort of find out different areas of this sector of the world that they've never thought about. Oh, music production and publishing and what are all these fields? I need to explore them. So, yeah, so thanks for the great work.
Thank you.